Als letzten Programmpunkt auf der Innovation Stage möchten wir jetzt einen ganz besonderen Schritt wagen, und zwar über die Grenzen Europas hinaus. EIDAS ist ja natürlich eine ureuropäische Verordnung, aber dabei dürfen wir nicht vergessen, dass eben auch auf anderen Kontinenten überlegt wird, wie Ökosysteme digitaler Identitäten aufgebaut und genutzt werden können. In Afrika zum Beispiel haben digitale Identitäten nochmal eine ganz andere Bedeutung als bei uns in Europa und auch noch größeres Potenzial der Vernetzung vielleicht. Darüber berichten wird uns nun Dr. Ralf Mbouna von Smart Africa uns live zugeschaltet. Ich sehe ihn noch nicht, but I'm going to switch to English. Ralph, can you hear us? Ah, there you are.
Understand, but I could hear you. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. That's that's the correct answer to my question. Thank you so much for being here, Ralf. Take it away. Present yourself, and yeah, good luck.
Thank you. So let me start by sharing my screen here. And while I'm doing this, let me, there we go, I think. All right, can you confirm that you're seeing my screen?
Yep, we can see it.
Excellent. Okay. So I'm going to be presenting digital identities in Africa, an ecosystem in the making. My name is Ralph Oyini Mbouna. I'm the Director of Digital Transformation and Services at Smart Africa. So this presentation, I'm going to take like maybe, let's say, 5 to 7 minutes to introduce you to Smart Africa and our vision. And then I take the remaining time, maybe another 10 minutes to present on digital identities and the ecosystem in Africa. Let me start by saying thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for having a Smart Africa on this prestigious summit. All right, so about Smart Africa, who we are. Well, a couple of years ago, African leaders dream of a unified digital market in Africa. So Smart Africa, our vision is to transform Africa into a single digital market by 2030. And our mission is to drive Africa's digital transformation agenda through a bold and innovative multi-stakeholder approach. So what we're trying to do is very simple. We're trying to unify Africa while respecting sovereignty, of course, by supporting our member states using digital transformation, right? So this is really our core mission. So the commitment of African leaders So the commitment of African leaders led to the creation of Smart Africa. So it was like in 2013 that 7 African heads of state sat on the same table and they say, okay, what is the best way to end poverty? Let's put it plain and simple, all right? What is the best way to reach prosperity for African countries? And they understood really quickly that true national development comes with regional development. So they created Smart Africa and they pledged under the Smart Africa Manifesto those 5 principles. The first principle is to put ICT at the center of national socio-economic development agenda. The second principle of the manifesto is to improve access to ICT, especially broadband. The third principle is to improve accountability, efficiency, and openness through ICT. The fourth is to put the private sector first. The fifth is to leverage ICT to promote sustainable development. The one principle that I love the most out of the 5 principles that govern us is to put the private sector first, the 4th principle. So keep that in mind because it will come back again. Smart Africa, of course, was endorsed by the African Union and by the International Telecommunication Union in 2014. It's just like a father and a mother in a way, right? The Smart Africa Alliance started as 7 countries and has grown to 39 member states ever since. 39 member states ever since, representing more than 1 billion people today. So those are the member states. This is the list of the member states. And it's still growing. I believe, if you ask me, I believe that by 2030 we will have all 50 plus countries of Africa. Now, this is what's so innovative about this Smart Africa Alliance. And remember, I told you about the 4th principle of the manifesto, to put the private sector first. Smart Africa is like an alliance of member states, of governments, of heads of states, but it doesn't stop here. We also work with international organizations. We also work with private sector, all type of private sector. We have here Airtel, we have here Google, we have here Facebook, we have here Orange. We also have here like the startups, the SMEs like Afritech, Simfix, TrustStamp, etc. So international organizations and private sector actors see immense potential in the single digital market. This is really what it is. And all together, we work to reach this goal. Let me cover a little bit about the Smart Africa governance structure, because it's important, because it's through that governance structure that we have our agility. So agility is key as governments, private sector, and international organization join forces, work together. So we have main organs here, and we have consultative organs. Let me start with the main organs. You have the Secretariat. For example, myself, I work for the Smart Africa Secretariat under the Director General, Lassina Kone. Then you have the steering committee. The steering committee, you have ministers of ICT sitting there. You have ITU and AU co-chairing the steering committee, and you have private sector, gold and platinum. Then the job of the steering committee is to kind of draft the agenda for the board, right? So nothing goes to the board without going through the steering committee. And at the board level, you have the heads of state of Smart Africa sitting there, right? Heads of state of member state of Smart Africa. And then you have also ITU, the SG of ITU, right? Doreen, Miss Doreen. Then you have like AU, the African Union. Then you have also again private sector, but at this point, platinum level private sector. So what's so unique about Smart Africa is that it's the only organization that you're going to find in Africa where you have heads of state, where you have private sector, where you have ITU and AU and over international organization partners of Smart Africa sitting on the same table and making decisions to advance digital transformation in Africa and socio-economic development. Then we have also consultative organs where you have the ICT ministers. The ICT ministers are pretty much a focal points in every member state of Smart Africa. You also have the private sector forum. We have the Council of African IT Agencies, because a lot of our work are linked to, for example, digital ID or digital platforms, digital transactions. So we work with the digital agencies in our respective countries. You also have the Council of African Regulators. As I'm speaking, I'm in Malawi, where we're having the 13 Council of African Regulators, right? So we kind of meet like twice per year, and the board meets once per year because it's the heads of state. So it's a little bit harder to get them more than once per year. This is the Smart Africa project planning process right here. The Secretariat, what we do is like we coordinate a lot of working groups. Those working groups comprise country members, partners, development partners like the banks, the financial institutions, private sector members. So they're part of this working group. And this working group, if, for example, I take the example of digital ID, you will have like a champion country. And the champion country for digital ID within Smart Africa is Benin. So Benin and the Secretariat of Smart Africa developed a concept note. That concept note then was brought to all our partners so that we can then develop a blueprint together. And that blueprint is brought to the board of Smart Africa, where it's adopted by the heads of state of Smart Africa. That gives like kind of like this power to the blueprint to be implemented in respective countries. One of the big recommendations, for example, of the digital ID blueprint was the creation of the Smart Africa Trust Alliance that we call SATA. And now SATA was created and is being implemented. We're conducting pilots under SATA. And once those pilots are validated, what we will do is like we will, of course, look for funding in order to scale it up throughout the continent, right? So the pilot involves like 4 countries for SATA right now. And then if at the end of this pilot, what we will do is like we will bring it to potential donors, potential development partners that want to invest in cross-border use of digital ID, right? This is the pilot of SATA, really, to access services, and then want to scale up through the continent. And once you scale up, the outcomes are clear. You create jobs, sustainable development, cashless economy, citizen participation, transparency, trust and accountability. These are the outcomes that we're looking for when we're talking about single digital market. So this is a little bit of the strategy 2023-2025 of Smart Africa. It's based on 3 main pillars supported by an acceleration program. So the first pillar is Connect. It's about digital infrastructure. The second pillar is about Innovate. It's capacity building. The third pillar is about transform. It's around digital transformation and services. It's within that third pillar, transform, that you're going to find what we call the SATA stacks: data exchange, digital ID, e-payment, e-commerce. So then we have like digital identities in Africa, an ecosystem in the building. So now I'm done presenting about Smart Africa. I'm just going to go on now with the main topic of the day. Smart Africa leverages digital technologies to support the African Continental Free Trade Area, AFCFTA. If Smart Africa, we're doing like the single digital market, AFCFTA is doing the single market, right? They're looking at everything around customs, duties, logistics, all these different parameters to get to the one Africa market. Smart Africa, we're looking at the digital part of it. So with a booming population and a growing economy, Africa is poised to become a major player in the global digital landscape. The AFCFTA is a game changer, creating a unified market of 1.4 billion people. Out of those 1.4 billion people, I believe we have 70% of this population that is under 30 years old. Smart Africa, Africa is the youngest continent in the world, like the population. So what we're doing is like we're really transforming ourselves into a powerful single digital market. It's a win-win for all. Let me be clear. When we talk about single digital market, we're not talking about single digital island, right? We understand that a market is connected with other markets in the world. So it's really important for us to create a single digital market that is interoperable with the other markets, with our sister continent, Europe, as well, right? This is why we're working closely with the European Union as well. So the outcomes, of course, is quality of life for the African citizens improved. And of course, with businesses that will grow, that will be able to trade bigger, to exchange bigger, is job creation. Digital ID. We have, this is why digital ID is so important for us, because it's the cornerstone of the single digital market, right? We have the AU interoperability framework for digital ID that came out like recently, two or 3 years ago. And Smart Africa was a big part of the creation of that framework, right? To empower citizens with trusted digital IDs, enabling interoperability. This is really important. In this figure on the left, you're going to see that, I showed this picture because like not for you to remember the percentage that is registered in Africa of the population that is registered, but just to show you the disparities, how diverse this continent is, right? So this is one thing. Compared to Europe, where countries have around the same level, Africa, you have a lot of disparities. And this is the ecosystem that we have to deal with. The strategic vision of the framework is to empower African citizens with trusted digital identities and enhance quality of life by enabling secure access to public and private services across Africa. The objectives are three. The first objective is to verify legal identities both online and both offline and online, because as you know, we have some big part of Africa is yet not connected to the internet. So it's important that for reason of inclusion, we care also about the offline authentication. Then we have empower citizens with control over personal data so that every citizen has control over his data and knows how it's used. Third objective, we have strengthen trust and interoperability among national ID systems. So what we're trying to do here, and it's very important, is like we're not trying to create like a centralized system or one ID for Africa. That's not what we're trying to do. What we're trying to do is like we're trying to create interoperable digital IDs, right? So that they can talk to each other because of course, the nature of our ecosystem with all the disparities. Implementation phases include 3 phases. The phase 1 is develop supporting legislative frameworks and standards. Phase 2 is to implement framework and technical specs for digital credentials. And phase 3 is scale infrastructure for advanced use cases like remote authentication, right? So Smart Africa, we try to support in all phases, all our member states. So this framework that govern Africa in terms of interoperability of digital ID systems was really supported by several organizations, including Smart Africa, the regional economic communities, World Bank, African Development Bank, UNECA, and GIZ BMZ from Germany was also part of that process. And it's all aligned with the Malabo Convention. So what's stopping us from really having this single digital market and digital IDs from different countries that can talk to each other and can cross-border used? Well, I put here 3 main challenges that we're facing. The diverse legal and regulatory frameworks across countries, the limited institutional capacity for governance. This is important because, listen, if I have one country A and then they invested millions of euros into like the governance systems where they have like, for example, a digital ID authority, and then you have another country that doesn't have the same, that doesn't have a digital ID authority, and where digital ID is handled as a directorate within the Ministry of Internal Affairs, for example, where you understand that the trust, it's difficult for that country to trust this other country. It's difficult for that country to let this other country to use the IDs, right? So this is the type of challenges that we're facing. And we, of course, trust is a big challenge in digital transactions. So overcoming these challenges is vital to unlock the full potential of the single digital market and boost intra-African trade. And I put like this image here. Intra-African trade represents 18% of African exports, right? Intra-European trade, to take Europe as an example here, represents 69% of European exports. This is a big problem. What does it tell us? It tells us that most of the revenues of Africa are really going out of the continent. This is what it is. Well, in Europe, most of the revenues kind of stay within. It's a better environment in Europe, for example, to scale businesses, create jobs, reach prosperity than the African environment. That's why we have a lot of our SMEs, a lot of our startups that prefer to go to Europe or go to the United States, where the environment is more favorable for them to scale, and then they come back to Africa once they scale. So this is the tendency that we're trying to overcome here. At Smart Africa, in order to overcome these challenges, we created the Smart Africa Trust Alliance. What is it? The Smart Africa Trust Alliance that we call SATA is a coordination and operations mechanism to enable cross-border use of digital identities and data for boosting digital trade and services across Africa. If we can do this, we're giving the chance to our people to have a better quality of life. We're giving a chance to our businesses to grow and become unicorns. The Smart Africa Board of Heads of States, remember the Smart Africa process that I described to you before. The heads of state adopted the SATA declaration, right? And we have already 12 countries, Benin, Congo, Gabon, Ghana, Guinea, Rwanda, Senegal, Togo, Tunisia, Zambia, Zimbabwe, Madagascar, that signed and adopted the SATA declaration at the highest level. What does it say? The SATA declaration is here to establish the foundation of SATA, of SATA governance and operations. Governance is key. And what it says is that those countries agreed to work together and allow cross-border digital ID use across their respective countries. It's a big step. I'm going to skip that, mindful of time. So those are the 12 member states that agreed, that represent 188 millions in terms of population, where they agreed to cross-border use the digital ID systems. Yes, another point that I wanted to mention here before I finish my presentation is, of course, collaboration. Collaboration is key. Collaboration is key. And what we do as Smart Africa is like we bring out the benefits for each type of stakeholder. When you look at the individuals, those are the benefits of a digital ID system, interoperable digital ID systems. When you look at public sector, this is the benefits for African governments. When you look at the private sector, of course, the benefits are really obvious, right? It's about growing, unlocking economic opportunities. And the overall benefits for all those different stakeholders, and this is why they must work together. And this is why we always invite every partner, all of these stakeholders, to come in those working groups and work together, is because we're looking at increasing trade and economic growth. We're looking at creating jobs. We're looking at better delivery of government services. We're looking at more empowered and informed citizens. This is the last slide, so it's a call to action. Let's build Africa's digital ID ecosystem future together. Please feel free to join us. The last slide will have like a contact information. Join the SATA movement. SATA, what we do can be summarized into three big parts. The first part is, of course, to build a strong governance and trust framework among African countries and partners that wants to join us. The second part is about setting up this shared infrastructure across countries to be able to do the digital ID authentication across borders. We call this platform, this technological platform, SADEX. And the third big part of SATA is to raise awareness and knowledge sharing of African countries, right? So this is what we do. We have like a pilot around accessing services, telco services. We have a pilot around non-stop border posts that we're working on. We have another pilot that we're working on around digital health. Thank you very much. And here are, like, of course, all the information. If you need to learn more about SATA, you have it on the right. If you want to learn more about Smart Africa, you have it there on the left.
Great, thank you so much, Ralph. That was really comprehensive, and I'm sure that yeah, we'll be able to share your contact information with anyone interested in contacting you and learning more about SATA and your initiative. Ralph, if you have time for one question, I'd like to ask you to build the bridge to EIDAS, because this is the EIDAS summit, and us Europeans we always like to compare, especially as Germans. Is there anything maybe you got inspired by looking at the EIDAS regulation, or also can you give us like a very short update on interoperability? Like, what are you planning above the frontiers of Africa?
Yes, definitely we got inspired from the EIDAS regulation. We actually study this regulation a lot, and the process of EIDAS inspired also the governance of SATA, right? What we learned about EIDAS is that the idea of EIDAS was, of course, to build this framework and the regulation so that it can do the interoperability of the digital ID systems. And there is, like, of course, different levels of assurance and all these things. And this is kind of the same principles that we have in SATA. Now, the one thing that we kind of added in SATA because of the nature of our ecosystem in Africa, of course, is like in EIDAS, we saw like a lack of private sector involvement in EIDAS, right? And SATA, we're very mindful of the private sector. We want the private sector to come and share the expertise and guide the decisions of those governments, so that when we build a use case, a pilot is based on a use case, and the use case is based on the private sector. So that was really something key and important here. And lastly, let me add that we're looking a lot also into the we're looking a lot into businesses, because like we want businesses to grow. SATA was kind of created also to support the AFCFTA digital trade protocol, the same way we have like the AU interoperability framework. We have like a digital trade protocol for the whole continent, and to implement it, a digital ID is at the center, and this was really important for us.
Great. Well, thank you so much for that answer and for your presentation. Unfortunately, I have to run to the next session, so I'll let you go. Thank you so much, Ralph, for joining us, for taking the time out of your busy schedule, and I'll be happy to welcome you back at Bitkom anytime.
Thank you. I'll be happy to come back.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Das Programm auf der Innovation Stage ist jetzt vorbei. Wir wechseln gleich in einer Minute auf die Main Stage. Dahin wechsle ich jetzt, und genau, alle, die sich jetzt von uns verabschieden, wünsche ich einen schönen Abend, und die anderen bleiben Sie dran.